Good day. Hope you're having a wonderful day. I want to continue our Bible reading where we left off last time. We're in the book of Matthew and ready to start with chapter 12. And I want to remind you that the purpose here, what we're trying to do, is read through the Bible, read through God's Word. We want to read it in the context that it's given and understand that context, and then see how we apply that to our lives. When Jesus is speaking to his disciples, since we are modern day disciples, we can apply a lot of that. I won't say, maybe even 95-98% of it. There may be minor things that we can't apply to us today due to just the times, or it's thousands of years later, and a lot of things are different, and we don't do things the same way they did back then. So that's, and we're not Jewish, and they were all Jewish. So sometimes that makes a difference. But by and large, all of this is for us. We can learn something from it, even if it doesn't strictly apply to us. So that's just a quick recap of what we're doing here and why we're doing this. So once again, it's the book of Matthew, chapter 12, and we'll start with verse 1. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." Now, the Pharisees saw plucking the grain heads and eating. They saw that as a work, and it's the Sabbath, and they were not supposed to do any work. They're very into the letter of the law, and some of them went so far as to they did not believe you should, fix a meal or do anything. You should not do any work. You should not do anything. They were just, they just happened to be walking through, and they were just doing that. To eat, it wasn't really like they were doing any real work, but they were trying, the Pharisees being very letter of the law, they were, saying, "Hey, look, your disciples are doing this, and it's not lawful." And Jesus, said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry, and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests?" Now, in this, you can look this story up in the Old Testament, and let me see if I can see where that is. I don't see it right now, but that's okay. This Bible just doesn't give that reference right now, but it is in the Old Testament, and when we get there, we'll see that. Okay, verse 5. "Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are guiltless?" In other words, people in the temple, the priests, they still have to do things. They still have to do things, whether it be sacrifices or whatever. That the work of the temple does not stop, and they do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. So he's trying to get them to look at more than just the letter of the law. "I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. And if you had known what this means, 'I desire mercy and not sacrifice,' you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." So here, of course, Jesus is referring to himself. He's greater than the temple. Of course he is. He's the Son of God. He's greater than anything. And if you had known what this means, "I desire mercy and not sacrifice," well, here he's referring to Hosea chapter 6, verse 6, where the prophet was saying, these very words from God, "I desire mercy and not sacrifice." And again, trying to get them to look at God's love and mercy and not just follow the letter of the law, because when you go to the point of just following the letter of the law, you lose a lot of times you can lose the intent, the intention. You can lose the heart and the spirit of the law. And we see that in our own justice system, honestly, and probably in any justice system in the world. We see where when you follow the letter of the law, sometimes you end up doing the wrong thing. You end up hurting someone that shouldn't have been hurt, or judging someone who shouldn't have been judged. And here, of course, Jesus is saying, for the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Well, he's the Son of God, and yes, he is the Lord of the Sabbath. And he's just trying to get them to see something more than the letter of the law, and to understand that, they should not condemn people for, having a meal on the Sabbath. Jewish tradition, I understand, is the Sabbath to keep it holy and not do any work, but to rest. But, but that didn't mean that you couldn't, they had shepherds, and they had people who have to tend their flocks. There are some people who are always going to have to work and do some business or whatever. Even in those days, you couldn't just let your animals run wild. You still had to take care of your animals. It's just normal stuff. So he's just, again, trying to get them to quit following the letter of the law. The Pharisees were really big on following letter of the law in a lot of ways. Now we're going to continue here with verse 9. And I'm going to read down through 14. I didn't tell you what I was doing in the beginning. I apologize, but I'm going to read from 9 to 14. Pardon me just a second. Just having a little coffee. Okay, so verse 9. He went on from there and entered their synagogue. And a man was there with a withered hand. And they asked Jesus, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? So that they might accuse him. Here they are. They're trying to get him into trouble again. They're trying to say, well, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Because they knew. They recognized that he was healing people, that he could heal people. And they knew, most likely, you set somebody in front of him that needed healing, Jesus was going to heal them. And they're trying to trap him through the letter of the law again. And he, Jesus, said to them, which one of you who has a sheep, if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not take hold of it and lift it out? Of how much more value is a man than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Now I stressed that a little bit, but this is what Jesus was telling them. So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Then he, Jesus, said to the man, stretch out your hand. And the man stretched it out, and it was restored, healthy like the other. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him, how to destroy him. There's so many things to notice here in all these exchanges, but I'm just going to point out some things that are obvious, but it's good to make sure that you see them. Jesus is talking about, well, what if you had a sheep or some other, let's say it's a sheep or a cow or a goat, whatever your animal, maybe it's even your pet. You have a pet that falls in a pit or somehow gets stuck or trapped. Which one of you is just going to leave it? You're just going to leave it. You're going to ignore it. You're just going to let it die. By the time you come back to it tomorrow, it could be dead, or you don't know. Why? You're just going to leave it like that because it's the Sabbath. And think about that logically. That's not how God intended that to be. He was trying to give you a day of rest and a day of holiness, but not a day of, I will be. Well, I don't want to say it like that, but it's almost like, they're almost to the point of being really dumb, really stupid. I'm going to follow the letter of the law to the point of I'm going to be really dumb and risk the life of something that might be valuable or mean something to me. And so, of course, he says, it's fine to heal on the Sabbath, and he does. And then you'll notice what the Pharisees do. Now, this is the Sabbath. This is to keep it holy day, okay? This is the day to keep holy for them. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him, how to destroy him. Well, that was on a Sabbath. Was that keeping the Sabbath holy? We're going out to conspire against Jesus and trying to find a way to destroy him? Okay, that's not Sabbath. That's not keeping it holy. Definitely not. That intent is totally wrong. So see, through this whole section here we've just read, they have the wrong attitude and the wrong thought process. That is not how God wanted things to be. Even, when we go through the Old Testament, and we will, Lord willing, and nothing interferes, we'll see a lot of the same things that Jesus says in the New Testament have been stated in the Old Testament. Not everything, but a lot of stuff is the same. because Jesus is trying to stress these things that God had already told them. And like I said, they just weren't getting it. They were following the letter of the law and not the spirit of the law, which is what God really wanted. Pardon me, still having a little coffee. So, I'm going to read, verses 15 down through 21. Jesus, aware of this, aware that the Pharisees were plotting against him and trying to find a way to destroy him, Jesus, aware of this, withdrew from there, and many followed him, and he healed them all. Now you get that. Many followed him, and he healed them all. That was a big part of what Jesus was doing. That was part of his ministry. That was part of the signs and wonders that he was performing on this earth as the Son of God. So, and he healed them all, and ordered them not to make him known. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. Behold my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved, with whom my soul is well pleased. Let me scroll this down. I'm sorry, because you're not going to see it all if I don't. Okay. All right. So, behold my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved, with whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he will proclaim justice to the Gentiles. He will not quarrel or cry aloud, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not quench, until he brings justice to victory, and in his name the Gentiles will hope. This was another prophecy from Isaiah about Jesus, our Lord, and this describes, you'll notice he's not doing these things. He's not like rousing the rabble or any of that, He's actually coming out and trying to teach the people. And yes, he does teach in parables, and I realize that sometimes they don't understand. But that too is prophesied, that they would not always understand or be in a place and in a position to understand, because a lot of it was heart conditions. A lot of it's how, and when I say the condition of your heart, I mean the condition of your spirit, your mind, your soul. Those inner things that are, how you really are underneath the surface. We're all the same in these physical bodies. We all have a physical body. But spiritually, in our hearts, in our minds, that's the condition I'm referring to. Like the Pharisees, they're so busy pumping themselves up and being the leaders and following the letter of the law, that they're missing the spirit of the law, the important part of the law. So, all right. So I just wanted to make that clear and plain. Now I am going to stop here for this session, and we will pick up from there in the next session. I want to thank you for listening. Leave any comments or any insights below. And again, thank you for listening, and God bless you.